How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the LA Soccer Hub Show. My name is Gio Garcia. Today is Tuesday, May 18th, and today we're talking LAC. We're talking black and gold. Obviously, it's been a rough start for the black and gold. You know, they only have 5 points in 5 games. We're going to get into that, but before we talk about that, I want to introduce my guest. We have Kevin Baxter from the LA Times. Kevin, how you doing?
All right. How are you? Thanks for the invite.
Pretty good, Kevin. It's been a while. Happy to have you back. We also got Josue Lopez. Josue, how you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thanks for the invite. It's an honor to be here with you and Kevin.
Yeah, Jose, you've been doing a great job, man. I always hear you in the press calls. I know not a lot of our listeners are familiar with you. Can you tell us, give us a little bit of background, because I know you cover both teams, on how you got started covering the soccer teams here in LA.
Here in LA? Well, it started in 2018. I used to work at the LAFC HQ store. So one thing got me to another. One very kind customer hooked me up with a digital media, and that's why you have me here. But yeah, I was born and raised in Mexico. Actually, I grew up in a soccer country, came to the U.S. and then studied in Los Angeles, and I have encountered a great soccer culture in LA, and I'm very happy to be doing this as a customer service person and now as a reporter or journalist or however you want to call me. So yeah, yes. And I try to do it both in English and Spanish.
Well, who's your team down at Liga MX? Who's your soccer team over there?
Oh man, I want to keep it a secret, but
it sounds like it's either Chivas or America.
Yeah, it can be one of those. They are not in the Liguilla anymore, but no, I have friends from Chivas, family members who support Cruz Azul, so I rather keep it friendly on that sense. So yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. Kevin, do you have a Liga MX team?
Wow, that's a hard one. I really like Cruz Azul.
Really? Why? Tell us why.
Well, what really drew me to them is I think they have a really cool logo.
They do. They really do.
And then I kind of like Leon too, because I got to spend some time down there when Landon was playing there. I went down and spent a while there around the team, around some of the front office people in the city. I kind of got to like Leon a little bit too. And then of course, Tijuana is so close, and their mascot is a dog. So I even have a Tijuana scarf up here. You can't see it, but there's a Cholos Quintles scarf over here, so that's kind of cool.
Nice. Funny that you mentioned Cruz Azul. So my dad, he's a Cruz Azul fan. So growing up, I was a Cruz Azul fan. Obviously they've had their struggles. I haven't seen Liga MX. I haven't been as involved. Obviously, I know what's been going on with them. But but it's been interesting, and I don't watch Liga MX as much as I used to. I'll watch it every now and then. But it's always funny whenever I talk to some of my friends who are Cruz Azul fans. I'm like, oh, how are they doing? They're like, yep, not doing so well. But yeah, well,
they like to suffer.
Yeah. There's another team too, Atlas, and the reason I kind of follow Atlas a little bit is I was down in Guadalajara doing a story on Lorena Ochoa when she was still golfing. And her family, they were all big Atlas fans. And she told a long story about how difficult it was to be an Atlas fan in Guadalajara, because at that time Chivas was really good. And I always kind of admired her devotion to the team. And even though she was Lorena Ochoa, people giving her a hard time because she liked Atlas. So that kind of stuck with me too. I guess they're kind of like the Chicago Cubs, right? Of Mexican soccer, never any good, but have a lot of loyal fans.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's the thing about rooting for a team that's not good. You really know who are the true fans and who've been through it all, right?
And that starts with me. I'm not a good Liga MX fan because I like something about every team. For example, Chivas, that only plays with Mexican. That team is more than a soccer team. It's a social phenomenon. America with Televisa in the background that love me and hate me. Monterrey and Tigres with the fan base that they have. Atlas that Kevin just mentioned, La Fiel, they haven't won a title in 70-something years, and the fans are still there. Santos, who is known as the city of strength and hard work, with their fans. So I like everything from everything. I rather enjoy the league than suffer with it.
Hey, you make a great point. So you're getting a shout out from Juan Carlos. He says, greeting, Josue. He says it up here. And we also got some Galaxy fans in here throwing a little bit of banter saying we run LA, hashtag LA Galaxy. But this is an LAFC segment. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, it wasn't an easy game for LAFC this past weekend against the Seattle Sounders. Kevin, what were your thoughts in the first half? Because it looked like the first half, the LAFC was really controlling with the high pressure there, and it looked like the Sounders were struggling with that high pressure, but ultimately LAFC wasn't able to convert, turn that into a goal.
No, I mean, they worked so hard and they got nothing for it. I thought that high pressure really gave Seattle a lot of problems. I mean, they had a hard time getting the ball out of the back end, and I think it put a little bit of pressure on their goalkeeper too. Remember, Stefan Fry wasn't in there, and so they had to go with their backup goalkeeper who hadn't played a game in MLS for a couple of years. And I thought that was designed maybe to put a little bit of pressure on him and try to force them to play the ball out of the back. But they worked so hard, LAFC did, and got nothing for it. And I'm not sure whether, in retrospect, that was such a good idea, because I think the fatigue really set in at some point. One thing that's interesting about that game is the first time these two teams met at LAFC at Bank of California, it was 1-1 draw, remember? And LAFC played a pretty good game against, obviously, the best team in the league. There's no question the Sounders are by far and away the best team in the league. And yes, I know this game was on the road. It was on turf, but LAFC just wasn't the same team. They definitely seemed to have regressed in the span of those two games. I thought the first game at home, granted, at home on grass, it's different, but it was sort of a different LAFC team. I don't think they were dangerous at all.
Yeah, I think after that first half, it got difficult for LAFC. But Jose, what were your thoughts on LAFC in that first half with the high pressure?
First of all, after the game between San Jose and Seattle, I was wondering if Seattle Sounders was going to play Alex Roldan as a goalkeeper, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And with the high pressure, that was interesting to see LAFC doing that. It's something that they have done throughout their short history, but they are clearly missing the final touch and the sharpness. Stefan Cleveland, the new LA Sounders goalkeeper, didn't have a lot of work, so. Yeah, they are missing the final touch. There was a couple of long-distance shootings. As far as I can remember, there was one from Christian Chiqui Palacio. So that long-distance shooting reflects the fact that they couldn't get into the area and make goals.
Well, it's the final third, really. I mean, there seems to be no chemistry in the final third. I mean, you have guys going the wrong way, passes going behind them. Mark Anthony Kaye had a great long pass that turned into nothing. There seems to be a lack of chemistry and a second thing, a lack of confidence. Too many guys looking to make a pass instead of taking the shot. Just a lack of again, confidence, a lack of commitment to what they're doing. And everything works fine until they get into the final third. And then all of a sudden, it seems like everybody just sort of loses an idea of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that's been the struggle, right? And I think also like Seattle Sounders, I think people are really underrated them this year. Like they it's not surprising that they shut out LAFC, but I think
you can't. Sorry, you can't underrate them. They're the best team in the league by far. I mean, they're the only unbeaten team. They're not the only unbeaten team. They're the only. They have the most points in the league. I guess there's a couple of other unbeatens that don't have as many points, but they're far and away. And they're playing without Jordan Morris, and they're playing without
Lodeiro.
Yes, so they're playing without two of their big stars, and now without their goalkeeper, and yet they're still, a team LAFC that picked by a lot of people to win the title. And granted, it's not the same team right now without Vela, but still, the Seattle Sounders just seem to be doing everything right. I don't know who's going to beat them. When you look around the league,
what I was gonna say is I know a lot of the MLS people, right, the writers and stuff, didn't have Seattle as as high because of Jordan Morris and Nico Lodeiro not being healthy to start the year, but I've always felt from what I've seen from Brian Schmetzer, right, how he's been able to beat LAFC and Bob Bradley, that I still felt that before the start of the year that they were still the team to beat in the Western Conference because of what we've seen with them and how he's able to adjust and all those different things. And I think the most frustrating thing about LAFC in this game was that they had opportunities. Granted, there were some that were limited, but I don't feel like they really got to test out the keeper in the first half. It's a new keeper. He looked nervous, and they didn't really get to test him out because a game like this, I felt like you could have got a goal by accident. The keeper slips or something, or but they didn't really test the goalkeeper out, and I think that's what's it's a little frustrating. Granted, also the defense on the job that the Seattle Sounders did, but I felt like the first half, if they would have got a goal, it would have changed the game. The game would have been different for LFC because then you bring on Carlos Vela in the second half. But I think when you look at it and you hit it, you talked about this, Kevin, is this team doesn't feel comfortable. This team obviously now last place in the Western Conference. There's going to be a lot of questions to be asked, and they have a target on their back because a lot of people really picked LAFC to win the MLS Cup. Granted, it's 5 games. There's still about like 30 something games left, but they're not really starting out strong when a lot of people expected them to do it. I want to talk about the second half. What were your thoughts, Kevin, on the second half and how LAFC played that? Because it looked like Brian Schmetzer made some adjustments. He understood that the high pressure was coming. I feel like he also understood that the LAFC was gonna get tired, and then we're gonna be able to high press like that. But what were your thoughts on the second half?
Well, yeah, I think Brian Switzer made some really good halftime adjustments, and that pressure didn't seem to bother them nearly as much in the second half. Bella comes on, plays 20 minutes, doesn't get a shot. I mean, that's again, he's coming out with his team trailing. Obviously, the idea to get the ball to him, and they did a good job of boxing him up and not letting him get in any dangerous positions. I don't even know if he got inside the box more than once or twice. They really kept him at distance, and he doesn't like to shoot from distance. So that's where you want him if you're an opponent. One thing I found interesting is if you look at the stats, and Gio, and Josue too as well. You guys have been around LAFC. When they're playing well or when they're on. If you look through the stats, and I got kidded a lot about this over the weekend because I always write about how they dominate statistically. But when they're on, what do? They always lead in time of possession. They always lead in passes. They always have high passing percentage. They always outshoot their opponent, and they always have more shots on target. And that's when they're playing well. Sometimes they don't have those numbers and they win anyways, but when they're playing well, that's what they have. So look at this game. You said the second half, but when you look at, full time, they led in possession 54-46. Each team had 10 shots. Each team had 3 shots on goal. LAFC outpassed Seattle. That's all those numbers that you want to see from LAFC. What happens? They get shut out for the first time in 20 matches in all competition. Carlos Vela's not getting shot. They forced Cisnega had 1 save and 3 shots on goal, and their goalkeeper, making his first start in a couple of years, has 3 saves. So they dominated the statistics and they got nothing for it.
Yeah, that's what's unfortunate about that, right? They dominated, and to your point, right? When LAFC was rolling because they were the better team the first half. You're used to. Well, we're used to seeing putting points and scoring goals and stuff, but that didn't happen. Quickly in the chat, Albert Morales says LAFC have star power, but they couldn't finish. They need to fully trust their coach or something to boost their morale. They definitely need a morale boost. Josue, what were your thoughts on LAFC in the second half?
Same ball position, however, not the same efficiency as the first half. The efficiency got a little bit low. I really admire what Seattle did when the LAFC attacked. I was watching the highlights today. They have like 6 or 7 players in their own area, and once Seattle Sounders got the ball, their attacks will be really threatening. Kevin was mentioning that each team had 3 shots each. However, when Seattle attacked, they were really efficient, really admirable how Roldan, Rui Diaz, who wasn't very participant as a striker, but more as an assistant. And I want to give a shout out to Brad Smith. What a player. He scored the first time against LAFC at the bank, and he did it again with a great run on the left side. So, yeah, I give more credit to Seattle with the way they stood on the back and they counterattack and the efficiency they had once they did that. Like their attack was more creative and more efficient in comparison to the LAFC one.
The Brad Smith goal was a good goal, and he scored in the first game too. He scored Seattle's goal.
Yeah.
The other one, I think it was Rui Diaz that scored on the set piece. Right, he was just at the far post. That to me, I think that was a mistake. I mean, a defensive mistake on LAFC's part. They seemed to give up a lot of good chances off the set pieces. I think there should have been another person at that far post that it was just too wide open.
It was Arriaga on the first goal, and I actually have the goal, which I want to play it to your point.
Oh, yeah.
Another whizzing cross, a flick header! Arriaga has found the bottom corner! It was a super delivery from João Paulo, and Arriaga has opened the scoring! A big moment for him and a massive goal for the Sounders, who elected to go for an extra pass, and now the Sounders are going to try and break here.
So I just wanted to recap. I have the second goal there, but I think that was LAFC's Achilles heel last season, right? The set pieces, and there wasn't. I think that the broadcasters were talking about that there was no one on that far post there that could potentially save that, and I think that's what makes it so frustrating about LAFC, that this is one area that I felt defensively they needed to clean up, and unfortunately they didn't clean up, and they got scored on that. And and I think that's what made it frustrating, because if that goal doesn't happen, right, they still would have been in there. But I think there was like a foul committed before that, and then which led to the PK, and it just wasn't a good defensive effort from LAFC on that play. And then I want to play the second goal here.
Here's Farfan stepping inside, trying to get it back to Vela. He didn't want it on his right.
No, hit it. He can hit it. I've coached him. He can hit it on his right foot. He's with the U19s. He can hit the ball.
Here comes Seattle now. Christian Roldan. Raul Rui Diaz. There's numbers on the right. Alex Roldan clipping it into the box. Smith has scored! Seattle gets it second. He missed a chance in the first half. He doesn't miss this time. It's 2-0.
Obviously, Farfan had an opportunity there to take a shot. He doesn't. I think he tried to look for Vela. Vela wasn't expecting the pass, but he also had a couple other. He got a shot. He could have passed it. I think Latif was there. Diego Rossi was there. Kevin, what was your thoughts on that second goal and Farfan's decision there?
Well, when you look at the replay coming back, I mean, that was for a counterattack. That was a long time developing. That was a slow developing play, and I thought LAFC had at least 2 or 3 shots to close that down. And 2 of the last 3 passes, the Seattle passes, were behind the player. I mean, the player had to stop and go back and get it again. If LAFC is coming back with numbers, you would have thought some of those guys would have had the pace to catch up and slow that play down. Instead, by the time they got the ball got in the box, Seattle had numbers and there was a lot of space. For a slow developing play, LAFC did nothing to close that down.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate, Kevin. They're giving you a little bit of banter. Kevin using a Man City jersey. Well, everybody, he's a Man City fan. That's why he's wearing a Man City jersey.
Champions League coming up.
Yeah, Champions League, exactly. Josue, what was your thoughts on that second goal, and obviously Farfan not wanting to take the shot, and it leads to Seattle Sounders a second goal there?
Yeah, the fact that Vela wasn't expecting that pass talks to you about the team's confidence, where the team's confidence is. And the second goal, a slow counterattack, but a great run by Brad Smith. What a player. And so, that proves the moment where LAFC is right now, both defensively in some moments, because LAFC was doing well in the defense in other games, not the Galaxy one before that. And on the attack, they haven't been very efficient either. And, you bring your players to the front, your back is empty, and that's what happens when you do that.
Gomez Jr. says, Seattle, we are lucky we got 1 point on our home match. I think after that performance, you could kind of say that. Another funny comment, LAFC is looking like Will Ferrell with the movie Kicking and Screaming. It sure definitely feels like that right now if you're an LAFC fan. G-Man has a question for you, Kevin. What does Kevin Baxter think of Bob Bradley? Bob, Bob looking overrated?
No, I mean, Bob Bradley is behind perhaps Bruce Arena and Brian Smetzer is one of the best coaches in MLS. And let's not forget what he did in 2019. Last year was the COVID year, shortened schedule. You kind of got to throw some of that out, and maybe that's just a year you kind of forget. He's struggling right now. I think probably the biggest problem is Bob is committed to his style of football. He talks about that all the time. He always talks about we play our football. And that's great when you have Diego Rossi and Vela healthy and up front. When you don't have them, the one fault I guess I would have with Bob is you have to. I think you have to change your formation. Then, if you don't have three dynamic forwards, go to a 4-4-2 and play a different style. And I don't think Bob does that. I think he's lined up in a 4-4-2, but Blessing's pushed forward, and they've tried to play the same style. And when you don't have the horses, it doesn't work. That would be my one fault with Bob. But I think that the people that are trying to sack Bob now are forgetting, how great LAFC was in 2019. And we'll get into some numbers in a little bit. Vela makes the difference. The numbers are amazing. And I have some stats that I spent some time looking up, and they're pretty incredible. So without Vela, it's a different team. I guess my one criticism with Bob would be he didn't react to the loss of Vela the way perhaps other coaches might, and maybe change the way his team plays. He's tried to stick with the same formation and the same style.
Yeah, and I think another thing to that, right? We have I was gonna say it. What's his? I'm forgetting his name. Jose Cifuentes, excuse me. He's playing out of position, right? He's like he was supposed to be the third forward, but I think I'm with you. I think they would feel more comfortable with the 4-4-2. If you had up there, and I think that adjustment and they also didn't have easy games, but when you're LAFC and you have these high expectations, I mean you got to be winning games. You can't be losing games like they have, unfortunately, because some mistakes and all this. And in the chat, Jesus says, look at Tristan's effort on the second goal. He could have pressured, but he gingerly jogged back. I would say a lot of players jogged back, and I think that unfortunately started with Marco Farfan not willing to take the shot, and Seattle just being Seattle and taking that counterattack. Edgar in the chat says, we need someone to draw out defenders like Vela does up front to leave Rossi open, or vice versa. Our defense is tired of chasing, cleaning up mess of our forwards do up front. Eventually the other team will score. What are your thoughts on that, Josue, about what Edgar said about, they need some defenders. We need someone to draw out defenders like Vela does up top. I know it's early and they haven't had Vela. He played 20 minutes, but this team is clearly different with Vela on the field.
It's hard to admit, but yes, the team is a whole different story when Vela is not there. But this happened last year as well. They play a lot of games without Carlos Vela, but the difference was that they have a number 9, which was Bradley Wright Phillips. I was revising on his stats from last year. He scored 8 goals and 6 assists. So these are decent numbers. However, more than needing another player who can dribble defenders like that, I think that what LAFC does need is a number 9, a striker, a Chicharito type of player that can be at the right place at the right time and score, because Opoku has been there. He hasn't been a good answer. I see Opoku most as in the wing. He's taking a lot of players. Maybe Opoku can be that option with his velocity. But yeah, I think that mostly what the team needs is a number 9. And I know there has been a lot of talk in that regard.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on with that. What are your thoughts on LSC needing a true number 9, Kevin?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think Bradley Wright Phillips, the loss of him makes a big difference. And that opened up a lot of things for Rossi. I mean, if you go back and look how many goals Rossi scored when Bradley Wright Phillips was on the field, I think you'll find out that there was a lot of them. Bradley Wright Phillips took a lot of attention, and that's why he had so many assists too. If you're a defending team now playing LAFC, and granted Rossi missed 2 games, so he's been a little slow. He's not looked like the same guy. And so why? Is it because he's not fit, because he's still injured and he's slow coming back? Or is it because other teams are focusing on him and taking him out of the game? If you're playing LAFC last year and you have Brian Rodriguez, who led the team in assists as a fast guy and is a good ball handler on one end, and you got Diego Rossi on the other and Bradley Wright Phillips in the middle, who do you watch? Now compare that to this year's team. You got Diego Rossi and you got Corey Bayard and maybe Danny in there once in a while, or maybe they're just they're going with 2 forwards. Yeah, it's not the same. I mean, if you're an opposing team, it's pretty easy to know who you want to take out of the game. I mean, the idea is force Corey Bayard to beat us. Don't let Diego Rossi do it. Well, Bradley Wright Phillips is a 2-time Golden Boot winner. That's a guy you got to pay attention to. And that distraction, if you want to call it that That's not there. And the people that are talking about Bob Bradley, and I don't want to criticize Bradley, certainly, and I really don't want to be too hard on John Thornton either. But if you want to talk about where the team might have made the turn down after 2019, well, I mean, first of all, that 2019 season was the best in MLS history. So probably not going to have a lot of those. But I think that offseason, when they got rid of Tyler Miller and they got rid of Walker Zimmerman, that made a big difference in the personality of the team, the leadership in the dressing room. Certainly changed the defense. They brought in Kenneth Vermeer, spent a ton of money on him. That didn't work out. They had to get rid of Vermeer. Cisniega, who was always supposed to be a backup goalkeeper, now he's the starter. They really don't have a backup. So they have recovered. You know, Murillo is in there, and Kim, and they've got some good additions on the defense. But I don't know that they've ever really recovered from what happened in the offseason last year.
Yeah, I agree. And Ricardo Hernandez says LAFC needs a true number 9. Any options during transfer window? I think before we get to that, we have to talk about, opening up that DP spot. Gomez Jr. says this hurdle right now, it's not scary. Scary is when we lose Rossi and Atuesta. That's when it'll be scary. Their sell is inevitable. If we can't find a number 9 replacement, I'm worried for the future. We are LAFC Live says bring in a number 9. Josue, I know we just talked about this, and you bring in the number 9. Luis Martinez brings up a good point, and this was one of my points. Does LAFC need to move on for Vela? My point is not. I don't think they need to move on from Vela, but I think is LAFC too reliant on Vela? And obviously I think the answer is clear, but without him, and I know Kevin has some numbers. He can bring in some numbers after this, but you can tell that they're not as threatening, right? And hopefully, come this Saturday, I believe it's Saturday when they play, hopefully Vela could play maybe 40 minutes or 45 minutes. But what are your thoughts on LAFC without Carlos Vela?
It's a whole different story. And regarding the game on Saturday, we don't know if Vela's gonna play 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 90 minutes. So that's still on the air. We don't know about that yet. But yes, without Carlos Vela, the team is a whole different story. I mean, he's your best player. Kevin will bring the stats later, but on his best season, he scored, I believe, 34 goals. I mean, he's clearly the best option you will have. And even though last season without him they make some good numbers, they didn't get any titles. But yeah, I see a different team when Carlos comes in. Is it bad to be dependent on Carlos Vela? I don't know. What happens when Barcelona doesn't have Messi? What used to happen when Real Madrid didn't have Cristiano Ronaldo? So if that happens in those high levels in Europe, it can happen here in humble MLS,
Fair. I mean, great point. Great point, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a drop anywhere, right? When your star player is not playing on them, but you rather be without Vela for a couple games, and yeah, to a point you are depending on them because they are the superstar, and that typically what happens. Kevin, give us some of those stats.
Well, the one thing with Vela, going back to Bob Bradley not wanting to change the way he plays, it kind of reminds me of a football team that has a big, strong-armed quarterback, and they throw deep, and that guy gets hurt, and they bring in the backup, and they try to play the same way. If he were that good, he would be the starter. Maybe you should go to a running game until he comes back. The numbers of Vela are astounding. In the first 2 seasons, remember they made the playoffs easily both times with the Supporters Shield. In the first 2 seasons, LAFC was 37, 13, and 18. And during that time, Vela started 57 of those 68 games. So he only missed 9 starts, okay? And they were 37, 13, and 18. In the last 2 seasons, Vela has just had 5 starts in the last 2 seasons. During that time, LAFC is 10, 10, and 7. So again, 37, 13, and 18 the first 2 seasons, and then 10, 10, and 7. That's overall. When Vela starts, the team is 34, 10, and 18, okay? That's through now. 34, 10, and 18 when he starts. When he doesn't start, they're 13, 13, and 7. So they go from being a dominant team to being very mediocre, 500 team. And so you say, well, okay, should we move on from Vela? I mean, he is such a dominant player, but he's 32. He missed most of last season with the knee injury. Now he has the hamstring problem. I think the question becomes how solid is he? Is he now in that stage where he's a little brittle and injury prone? It's only 5 games in the season. He could play the next 29 games and win the scoring title, and then this conversation is moot. But what if he goes back, plays a couple games, and gets hurt again? How long does LAFC let this go? Because it's clear that they have trouble winning without him.
Yeah, and I think that's the point right there, right? And I'm with you on that point. It's not necessarily right. If LAFC is dependent on Vela, that makes sense. But I think if Vela is not able to stay healthy, then I think it makes LAFC not as strong, not as as valuable, because if Vela can't stay healthy, and this could be the downward towards his career, or it could not be. It just happens, and so he goes on and scores and ends up scoring 20 plus goals, right? And this conversation's over. But we've yet to see that. Just want to get some things in the chat. The team has to rely on one player every game. How good is the team really? A good point, but I would also say it's Vela. He also LAFC says LAFC and not Vela FC. but I feel like it is Vela FC. This wow, you have Vela. G-Man says RIP. LAFC Hawaii says we need to add in a veteran number 9 that can help Vela and Rossi. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, depending the strength, I mean the health of Carlos Vela, that's going to be the question. Because if he comes back and he's healthy, and this just happened, then I think you're good. But I think the offense is struggling. Rossi is still trying to get in rhythm. So like I said, Sounders defense is for real. The Sounders team is for real, and they're not going to make it easy. And it doesn't make it easier, right, on Corey Barrett as well, because Corey, like, if they shut out Chicharito, who's having a great season, that's the only team so far he has not scored, right? And we can't say that Chicharito is not good, right? Because he didn't score in Seattle. That Seattle is just that good, unfortunately. And they did it to Rossi. They ended up doing right to LAFC. But that's just what happens. And I want to look forward to LAFC. And I want to bring up the rankings. I didn't want to the power rankings, which are very controversial. But obviously they have Seattle number 1 and LAFC number 9. I think MLS is playing with us there with those power rankings. But I was trying to bring up the table. I thought this was the Western Conference table, but I pulled up the wrong one.
By the way, the ESPN power rankings are different.
Way better. Yeah. I thought these were the Western Conference standings, so that's my fault. But what I was going to bring up, obviously, the LAFC sits in last place on 13th
place.
First time ever, 5 points.
A new territory, as Bob said.
Yeah. Jose, give us your thoughts on that with the team with so many high expectations. They're sitting in last place.
It is surprising, but it is something that happens in teams all around the world. They play in a certain level, they go to a high peak, and eventually their level somehow goes down. So yeah, it is something normal in the world of football, but not on the expectations that LAFC has for the season. So yeah, it is a surprising thing that they're in the last place. But I think they have the quality to get out of there as soon as possible. They have 4 games at home, so it might be the right time to get some momentum. I mean, let's remember Minnesota. They were not doing so well at the beginning of the season, and now they have a couple of wins, and they are getting back in a good momentum. I think the same story can happen with Los Angeles Football Club.
Yeah, and Kevin, so I'm going to bring up this question. Katie has a really great point she's making here. I really wish Vela would break his silence. I know he is privately, but he is the best player in the MLS when he is healthy and playing. It would be great to hear from the man. Javier has been talking up a storm lately, and it's great. 2 different players, right? Vela and Chicharito. You obviously have interviewed them both. What are your thoughts on what Katie has to say there?
Well, Katie, I like what you're saying, what you're thinking. I have been trying to get LAFC to have Vela talk for 3 years now, and you see how much success I had. I did get him briefly in the preseason. Up until this preseason interview, he had talked to me for 8 minutes over the first 3 seasons, one-on-one. So you're right about Chicharito. I think Chicharito had a tough time last season, and I think he wanted to get a lot of stuff off his chest this year. And he is talking up a storm. And in fact, he's talked after every game. The only time he didn't talk was after the Seattle game, and he wanted to speak to the media on the Zoom call, and the media said, we don't have any questions for Chicharito. The next week, the same thing happened. The media said, we really don't have any questions for Chicharito. He crashed the Zoom call. He came in anyways and said, I'm going to talk. He's just coming off as a guy who's happy and centered and sort of moved past whatever problems he had. With Carlos, Carlos is a different guy. He's a little bit maybe of a brooding kind of guy. I don't think he would get the same benefit from talking to us, but certainly at this point, I mean, I think the fans deserve to hear from him, and unfortunately for some of the fans, we're the conduit for that. Yeah, he can go on social media and say what he wants, but to be asked the tough questions about, how's your injury? Are you now injury prone? Whatever. I do think Carlos owes it to the fan base to be a little more accountable about this. And just wait, you were absolutely right about LAFC being a good team. I mean, look at the roster that they have, and some of these players. Atuesta, is there a better midfielder in the league? A couple probably, but he's on anyone's best 11. Murillo's pretty good. Segura's pretty good. Rossi, he's the reigning Golden Boot champion. When you look at the 11 that they put out there are 3 or 4 of the top players in the league, I think, on this team. So they shouldn't be in last place. And that's kind of the maddening thing about it, is the team is certainly better than the record. The players individually are better.
And I think that's what makes it difficult. Quick, I just want to ask, guys, G-Man says the YouTube stream is bugging out. If you guys can let me know, I'm going to try to see if I can fix that. Hopefully everything looks clear on my end, but if it's bugging out for everybody else, can you please let me know? Jose, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that besides that good players that Kevin mentioned, they have a solid goalkeeper in Pablo Cisniega as well. He's in a good moment, so that's important to have a goalkeeper that is in a good momentum, as Pablo does.
Let's talk about this. Obviously, we talked about what's going on, but look, how can they improve, right? LAFC needs to quickly turn this thing around. They got Colorado this Saturday, and a team like LAFC, and also being in the second biggest city in this country, there comes with expectations, and I think that's what. Jose, I think when you touch it, you kind of rattle the sound. Jose.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. When you do that, there we go. Because it will mess with that. But thank you. But I think with LAFC and these high expectations that they have, they need a performance, and it's right for the fan base, the fans to put pressure on them, because everybody else is putting pressure on them. And if you're not performing in the first 5 games, either you're gonna be. I feel like you're going to make it or not, because this is LA, right? The big stars, big expectations, and right now LAFC is not living up to that, and I think they do deserve some criticism. But I also want to see how they react, right? There's still 30 games left, something like that. I'm not counting out this team out, but I think we need to see something this Saturday, right? Kevin, how do they turn this thing around?
Well, they need to get Vela back, clearly. I mean, that's going to make a big difference. And if he can't come back 100%, they need to find another style of play. They need wins right now. I mean, that's what they need. They've talked a good game, but you see them getting progressively, in my mind, getting progressively worse. They beat Austin in the opener. That's the only game that Vela started in. They beat Austin. They looked okay. They didn't look like old LAFC, but they did enough to win. Then they had the draw with Seattle. Hey, that's a good result against a really good team. Then they had the second draw, and now they lose 2 in a row. So they're going the wrong way. I think they need a good performance, and they need to get points out of it to build their confidence. I think right now it's a confidence thing. You almost see the team waiting for something to go wrong. Back in the day when they were good, you knew they were waiting for something to go right. And they just knew it was going to happen. Now they're going the other way. Colorado, however, I mean, this is a team, they've won 3 in a row. They're 3-1-1. ESPN has them 6th in their power rankings. And Robin Fraser now has had some time there as the head coach to turn things around. Remember, Robin Fraser was on that 1996 Galaxy team, the same team that produced Greg Vanny, that produced Kobe Jones, that produced so many. I think there's 6 guys who went on to coach in MLS. A couple of them won Supporter Shields. So Robin Fraser knows what he is doing, and really has this Colorado team playing well. I don't think this is going to be an easy game for LAFC. I think it's a game they should win. They're at home, and if they have Vela back. But another poor performance, and you're right there, Gio, there's 29 games left. But another poor performance, and this thing could really start to snowball the wrong way. Because we're going to get now into the period where we're going to have international call-ups. And I know that Rossi is not on the roster now, but some of these guys will be missing. There'll be some time off that may help LAFC and certainly allow Vela to get healthy. But once you get in that summer period with so many guys off and the fixture crunch, it's going to be difficult to build momentum once that happens.
Yeah, and I think that what another thing that makes it so interesting, right, is that game against Saturday because you don't want to lose this game, right? Because the pressure is going to add on, and then the chat LAFC who says, well, the team in the MLS is playing with one DP. I think there's a couple teams playing. They don't have all three DPs. There's a couple I can't name them all. One MLS team loans out their DP, and then the same DP isn't wanted by anyone. He's talking about Brian Rodriguez. We'll get into that, and I think, but I
Remember,
think.
this is a team that's had bad luck with DPs. Remember their first year of the DP they had.
So are you saying LAFC's cursed with the third DP, Kevin?
Well, they've had Bella and Rossi that both produced well, both won Golden Boots. You can't, that's really good. I think if you told any general manager or any sporting director, hey, you get 3 DPs, but 2 of them will go to Golden Boots, the other one's going to suck. They probably would have taken that. I mean, that's pretty good production. But LAFC really has missed on that third DP, I think.
Guys, I'm sorry for the stream that is lagging on YouTube. I don't know what's going on. If you guys don't mind tuning on Twitter, on LA Soccer Hub, or Facebook, those are the other two options. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on over there. So I'm getting that from YouTube. It looks like Periscope on Twitter, LA Soccer Hub on Twitter is working, and Facebook. I apologize for that. But yeah, I think the thing that makes it so interesting about what LAFC is going through right now is because, like, right, you said it, Jose, is new territory, and they don't know what's the future going on. But I want to ask you this. Let's talk about the Brian Rodriguez situation, right? Let me just bring a timeline. Obviously, from the weekend, from what I saw, LAFC Kui. He keeps up with it really well, so he's done a great job with that. Also, LAFC Live, but Brian Rodriguez got in a I don't want to say a fight, but whatever, like it's a fight, but it wasn't a physical fight with his teammate over a free kick. Obviously, he took off his shirt, right? I think everybody saw that. Then the following day, he goes on a Uruguayan national TV or sports channel, and talks about that he's not happy. Well, obviously with Almeria, and then he wants to go back to Peñarol. Doesn't mention anything about LFC. Doesn't mention anything about that. That's just the gist of it, right? Since that happened, he ended up getting fined by Almeria because he went to the Uruguayan national. He went to Uruguayan media. They didn't approve that. But what are your thoughts with Brian Rodriguez and the whole situation going on over there?
There is not a healthy relationship between Brian Rodriguez and LAFC, and I began to realize that on the CONCACAF Champions League quarter, semifinals, and the final. In the game against Cruz Azul, he brought Brian Rodriguez until the 80th minute. He brought Mahalo Opoku first, and he scored a goal. In the game against America, I believe he didn't bring Brian at all, and then in the game against Tigres, he brought Brian until the minute 88. So Brian was not clearly a good available option in the most important moments of the club. So you have that, and then you have the tantrums on TV and Uruguayan radio stations, and you have this atmosphere with his teammates with a heated argument that you mentioned. I don't see a good environment between LAFC and Brian Rodriguez. Him as a player in general, with the clubs where he is signed with LAFC and playing with Almeria, where, LAFC Life has done a great job covering that he hasn't played a lot of minutes.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, Kevin.
Well, he's not going back to Spain because he's been suspended, I think, for the last game, and then he's going to go back to Uruguay to play in their international matches. So I don't think he's going back to Spain. I guess the question is whether he comes back to LAFC, and I think if LAFC can get rid of him, I think they would be wise to do that. Gio, you were the first one last year to notice how unhappy he was and the fact that he was a borderline distraction, that he wasn't fitting in. And let's look at that for a minute. This guy is a teenager. Yes, he's on the Uruguayan national team playing over Diego Rossi. Obviously, they see a lot with him. He led LAFC in assists last year. But if everything that we have heard and people have told us and all that is true, here's a guy that's playing up front with Carlos Vela and Diego Rossi, okay? Diego Rossi, Golden Boot winner. Carlos Vela, one of the best players in the world. Single season record holder in MLS, played in 2 World Cups. These are guys a teenager like Brian Rodriguez should be worshiping, should be talking to, should be trying to learn from. Instead, he's telling them, pass me the ball. I'm better than you guys. That's not how, he should be playing. And he's a really talented guy. And I think as a teenager, he has the world ahead of him. He could be maybe a kind of an Almiron type guy and go over and play in Europe and be somewhat successful. But now he's getting this reputation as a hothead, as a guy that doesn't fit in, as a selfish player. That works if you're Ronaldo or Zlatan. It doesn't work if you're Brian Rodriguez.
I agree, and I think he played today. He played 15 minutes. LAFC, and I just checked. He did play 15 minutes. I think I saw he apologized to the team. So I don't know if that keeps him with the team, but yeah, I think I was one of the first to notice that, and I brought it up. And when I would talk about it, I'd get some like shade from some fans that really like Brian Rodriguez, but I felt like, hey, I need to share this information, and I guess I came across that I was sort of being a hater or whatever, but now obviously I think everybody can see it after that interview. He did, right? You get to understand who Brian Rodriguez really is. And I've been calling this out for like 8 months now. You know what I'm saying? I've been saying this for 8 months, and people didn't want to believe it, but unfortunately it's happened. And I think the worst case scenario for Brian Rodriguez and LAFC has happened. He's not going to get picked up from Almeria. I think it's pretty clear. I think there was also a report, LAFC Kui, he put it out that, Almeria have rescinded the loan, obviously, which means they're not going to pick him up. And he's going to go and end up going, obviously, he's going to go to Uruguay because he has the World Cup qualifier. But I think what are the options, right? LAFC right now are looking for players, for solution-based players. Brian Rodriguez does not look to me like a solution-based player. He looks more like a problem, and he's adding more to the problem. So, right, let's talk about what are the options for LAFC.
Well,
and I think
I want to say, first of all, I don't hate him as much as you do, Gio. I think you actually hate him.
I don't hate him. No. Let's get something right. I don't hate any of these players on LAFC or Galaxy. I just never thought. This is what I've said. Everything that people are seeing now about Brian Rodriguez is what I've said. It's actually coming true. But I just feel like LAFC overpaid for him. I feel like they overpaid. I don't hate him. I have no ill will towards him. I just don't think he's that good, unfortunately.
No, I don't see what the Uruguayan national team sees in him. They seem very high on him.
He has connections.
And you know what? They see him in training every day. And I don't. So I'm going to go with them, and they know what to talk about. But when I look at him, what I see is a player that is a useful player. He's a guy. I don't see him as a goal scorer. I see him as a guy who is a playmaker, who gives a lot of assists. I don't see him as a guy who is going to dominate a front line that already has Carlos Vela and Diego Rossi on it. And again, I would just go back to, as a young player, I would think that he would want to fit in and learn. I mean, Almiron was not the leader of that team in Atlanta. Josef Martinez was, but Almiron's the guy that went to Europe because he played his role. I just don't know. Brian Rodriguez wants to be the star of the team, which is fine. I understand that. But when your team has Carlos Vela and Diego Rossi, guess what? You got to wait your turn.
Yeah, and Sebastian here throwing some shade. I'll let you go. He says, "Yes, you do, Gio." I guess I do. I don't hate this player, but go ahead, Jose.
Maybe the difference is the attitude he has in the national team in compared to Almeria and LAFC. Maybe he has the right attitude with Uruguay and not a right approach with LAFC or Almeria in this case.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's just the connections with Uruguay. I think he's really well connected. Uruguay national team is like a boys' club. Once you're in it, you're in it. It's so hard to get in there. You see why Rossi's not in there, right? Rossi is more talented, in my opinion, than Brian Rodriguez, but he's not on there. He's just not part of the boys' club, which is the Uruguay national team. So Gomez says, came back because the Twitter isn't working either, but it's worse here. Try Facebook. Guys, I'm sorry about the stream. I don't know what's going on. I paid the bills. I paid my Wi-Fi. You can go to Kevin's house. Apologize what's going on here, but let's talk about the solutions, right? I think let's talk about what the options are for Brian Rodriguez, and this is what I see, and I want to get your thoughts, right? Number one option that LAFC can do right now, they can loan him out again, right? Which I don't think you want to do that if you're LAFC, but you can loan him out again to another team. The number two option, which I think is the most intriguing option for LAFC, and Brian Rodriguez has talked about this, they sell him back to Peñarol. It's like a fire sale, right? but you also add on the sell-on clause, right? Whether it's 50%, 30%, right? If Peñarol ends up selling Brian Rodriguez to a European team, and that's how LAFC, I see them could potentially get their money, right? Is if they add in that percentage on the sell-on clause. The third option, which is highly unlikely, he returns back to LAFC. And I don't see that because, one, everything that we're seeing here, I think he's devaluing his value by going and talking to the media. He's clearly upset people out there. He's clearly upset people with LAFC because that interview doesn't help his stock at all. It only made it worse. He made himself look worse, but he also made his stock look worse. So I think those are the three options. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
Well, Bob Bradley runs a very tight ship. That's why he's a good coach. It's a team game, and he has a team that he manages, and no one stands out. Maybe Vela a little bit, but no one really stands out. And so if Brian Rodriguez wants to come back with what we perceive, and again, you and I have not talked to him. We're seen in the media and all that, but we've been around him, and you pick up a little bit. So if he's going to have this attitude, I think it would be better for everybody if we went back to Peñarol. Now, what happens? LAFC would lose money when they send them back, but they have that relationship with Peñarol already. Remember, they had the friendly here recently, and Diego Rossi came from that team. Brian Rodriguez. They have a relationship, scouting. They have interchange of coaches and players. I think there's a deal to be made there. Maybe LAFC has to eat some money when they send them back, but the next player they get them at a discount, or maybe there's a friendly game that's played, and LAFC gets the bulk of that proceeds. I think there's a way to make it work. But I just don't see a disgruntled player coming back into Bob Bradley's team and that working out well for Bob Bradley or for the player. I kind of feel like that train has already left the station.
I'm with you on there. What are your thoughts on those options, Jose?
I don't see him coming back to LAFC either. He will be more like a problem than a solution. I think I insist that the LAFC needs a number 9, not an assistant. And I see Brian Rodriguez being more as an assistant player than a scorer. So he's not part of the solution. And so, yeah, I don't see him returning to LAFC, even though Bob Bradley has said that it will be exciting to work with him again. But we'll see what happens. You never know. The future is really unpredictable in that sense.
Yeah, Gomez Jr. says, take him with the receipt back to Peñarol and get a refund or exchange for Torres. Laugh out loud. I mean, if you could work out a deal where you can bring in a number 9 or something, right, then it makes sense. But I think clearly the market is not there for Brian Rodriguez. Clearly his stock is definitely devaluing. Clearly, I don't think anybody in Spain is going to want him with that situation going on there, right? So I think the only option that I clearly see is he goes back to Peñarol. And LAFC are gonna, they're gonna have to lose some money. I mean, it's $11.5 million, guys. It's not. He didn't come over cheap. That's the most money LAFC has paid for in a transfer to bring in over a player. And unfortunately, it hasn't worked out. And I think this is the worst situation right now for LAFC because I don't see any other options for them. I don't see any options for Brian. I don't see the only good thing that about Brian Rodriguez that he still has is that he's still in the national team. That is unfortunately the only good thing for LAFC, for Brian Rodriguez, and for Peñarol if they want him back. Because if he wasn't if he didn't get called back to the national team, then he pretty much loses all his value.
But it goes both ways. I mean, here's a guy that went to Spain, second division, and did not become a starter or dominant player. So you're kind of going, well, we talked about him going to Europe and Rossi going to Europe. Again, second division in Spain, not a dominant player. Yes, he's on the national team. He's still young. Those things work for him. But the other thing is you talked about $11.5 million. It's a really difficult market. I was talking to Jovan Karaski, who's the sporting director, technical director for the Galaxy, and he's in France right now, where he's had some success recruiting and signing players. And he told me that the market right now, because of COVID and teams struggling financially, that it's a really tough market. And if you're a buyer, you can get some real good bargains out there. Players that would cost a lot of money otherwise, you can get them on the cheap. But if you're trying to sell a guy like Brian Rodriguez, you're trying to sell him on the potential. Nobody's buying potential right now. They just don't have the money to buy potential. If LAFC doesn't take him back, they're going to lose money. Just flat out, they're going to lose money, probably a lot, at least initially.
Yeah, and I think they are losing a lot of money. I don't know how much, but they are. And unfortunately, the Brian Rodriguez experiment has not worked. Katie has another great point here. She says sell the diva, and LAFC should buy a seasoned striker or midfield. I know we love young talent, but LAFC needs a bit of an older player with amazing experience. We need someone we can rely on, or someone who will show up with consistency. And I definitely think that's one thing that they're missing is that consistency and those players. What are your thoughts on that, Josue, on selling Brian Rodriguez and bringing in a seasoned player?
It will be difficult to do because of the COVID situation and the circumstances that Brian has. Yeah, on one hand, he's a Uruguayan national team player. Maybe Oscar Washington Tavares is something that we done on him. And on the other hand, you have a player who has a lot of attitude problems. He has arguments with his teammates. So it will be difficult for him to go to another team because of the COVID crisis and the attitude he has had so far. Because he has a talent, but maybe not the mentality to be on a team solid. And besides Peñarol, who knows?
Yeah. I don't see them bringing in, with the exception of Kim, they haven't brought anybody over the age of 22 in a long time. I mean, look at the guys they brought in. Even Farfan's very young. Opoku, Traore, Corey Baird's a little older. He's at 26. But they're really bringing in these young guys with the intention of getting a couple years out of them and selling them. I think that's how LAFC wants to finance the operation going forward. You got rid of Bradley Wright Phillips. They got rid of Tyler. They got rid of Walker Zimmerman, although that was a special situation. That was a deal that was too good to pass up, and it turned out that they should have passed it up. But I don't see them. You're right. They need a guy, 27, 28, an experienced guy to take the lead of this offense if Vela remains hurt. That's just not their MO right now. They're looking really young. That's why Bradley Wright Phillips was not even given a contract offer.
Yeah, and I think it's good that you can go young, but I think you do need a little bit more experience up there with Vela. Obviously, there's been lots of names thrown around there, but I can't even get my mind there yet until the Brian Rodriguez situation is handled. And I feel like this is what, to me, I think this is what I think LAFC should be a little bit more urgent on than opposed to season, because I think they can turn the season around because it's still early, right? There's 30-something games left, not 5 games left, right? So I think with this DP spot, because right now Brian Rodriguez is dead weight, is literally dead weight for them. Even if you loan him out, right, then you're going to have to, if you loan him out for 2020 or 2021, the rest of 2021, you're still going to have to deal with him at the end of the year if he doesn't do good, right? But I think you just got to get rid of him and open up that DP spot and see what you're working with. See what the market is out there. I mean, we're just a few weeks away from when it opens up. I think in June or July. We're coming here we're in the middle of May, and obviously Almeria, is coming down. It's coming down to the end of the season. I think they only got a couple games left. They lost today, so I don't think it's looking likely on how they make it up there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's talk about the game this Saturday. How do you think? I know we talked about it earlier, but will LAFC get the win this Saturday, Kevin?
Well, I don't know. They need will they get the win? I don't know. I'm kind of thinking, I'm feeling, and if you're asking me to predict, I'm feeling draw because Colorado's pretty high right now. I'm feeling draw, but LAFC needs a win, and they because they need to play well and they need to get something for it. I think they feel like they played pretty well in the Galaxy game. They didn't get a point for that. They didn't get a point in Seattle. They feel like they're working hard. I mean, we can debate that, but a lot of the players feel like they're putting in a lot of work and they're getting nothing out of it. They need to get something. They're not going to be satisfied with a point at home, but they need something. They can't afford to lose 3 in a row.
Definitely not. Jose, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and the fun fact is that they haven't lost at home at all in this season. 1 win and 1 draw. Yeah, as Kevin said, I see a tie, and if they win, it will be 1-0 with an ugly goal at the 87 or 90 minutes. I don't
making it thrilling, making sure the fans stay all the way to the end.
Yeah, they stay all the way.
If you're going to do that, I'm going to say Vela hat trick.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
And
40 minutes, Vela gets a hat trick in 40 minutes.
And then we come
Yeah.
back to next week and talk about how great they are with Vela and what a wonderful team and how they're going to win MLS Cup.
Yeah. So yeah, I see that happening, and most of that will depend if Vela is in or is out.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is as you know how many minutes Velez gets. We saw him get 20 minutes. Bob Bradley said he didn't really get pushed too much, but I think you want more. You would like to see more minutes out of Vela. You would like to see him play 40 minutes, maybe play the second half to really see where he's at, because he's been sitting out for so long, and right, he's been practicing. But like, this team really needs Vela. This team really needs Vela on the field. They need him around. I know he hasn't been to a couple games, but they need him in and around. You need your superstar around at all times as much as you can, and I think that's what LAFC has been missing. They don't feel as connected. To me, they don't feel as connected as they were previous years. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can tell in the locker room, you can just tell how they're playing and just different things. It's not gelling well. But you know what can save that? You can bring that back as a win. And this team needs a win, and we'll see if that happens Saturday, because if they get a loss, the pressure is going to add up.
Well, it's just what I said. They have a 4-game homestand coming up. If they get through Colorado, then I'm looking at the schedule here: New York City, Houston, and Dallas. Those are all 3 winnable games. They could easily, if they beat Colorado, they could run the table. They could win all 4 of those. All of a sudden, we're talking about a team that's above 500, probably at the top, near the top of the standings, 4th or 5th at worst. And all of a sudden, it's a different conversation.
Yeah, 4 games, and then they have that two week break there. Last question here. Be interesting who LAFC sends to the lights in both those games. That's another thing I think we should have talked about. But guys, we're coming down to the final hour, or down to the final couple minutes.
Maybe Vela should go to Las Vegas and get some minutes.
Yeah, right. Las Vegas
that would be a pretty inexpensive ticket. I don't know if LAFC would want to do that.
They need him there too. They haven't started very well either.
Oh my God! Yeah, Las Vegas Lights. They're sharing a lot of players, and Mahalo ended up getting injured for LAFC at the Lights. But yeah, guys, any final comments before we sign off here?
We'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah.
Hopefully, my 87-90 goal prediction becomes a reality. We'll see.
We'll see. Well, Kevin, we'll let the people know where they can follow you.
KBaxter11 on Twitter and at latimes.com.
That's why let the people know.
Please follow me Twitter and Instagram at JosueLH686. Again, JosueLH686.
Guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you everybody for the chat. Unfortunately, I'm sorry for what happened on YouTube. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to get in touch with YouTube, but that's the first time that's happened. But for those listening, every Tuesday night we're talking LAFC, we're talking Black and Gold. So if you guys want to join us in the chat, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, join us and comment and let us know your thoughts. And if you guys want to follow me, you guys can follow me at Gio Garcia LA on Twitter. Make sure to give us a like and follow on all the social media platforms. So for Kevin and Josue, this is Joe. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Good night.